Hi, this is Nancy with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy. We are at our last segment for learning the techniques used in the Sunset Over Dublin quilt. And that's the quilt behind me, well, a quarter of it anyway. And there's 41 blocks in that quilt, all 8 inches finished. But if you don't want to make all 41, you don't have to. You can make the smaller sizes. Those instructions are in the book also. The book is available on our website, onpoint-tv. Check it out. There's other books and patterns there also, including my popular Learning to Quilt, where I take you through just about every step you need for making a quilt. So today's block, as I warned you last time, is the most difficult block in the whole quilt. It's a Lemoyne Star. Now, over the last few years, there's been a lot of designers doing a wonderful job coming up with easier ways to make a Lemoyne Star. But those easier ways often waste a lot of fabric, or instead of a set seam that I'm going to show you, they'll do it with half square triangles. So it's a lot more piecing, and then you've got a lot more seams. I personally like the traditional Lemoyne Star using my regular ruler. No fancy ruler work here. I'm going to use this one as a 6x10 Omnigrid ruler. I love it because of all the angles they have them going on both sides. Works really great for a Lemoyne Star. The only other tool that you're going to need for this is a marking pen. So I'm using a micron marking pen that is a 0.03, which is a tip that's not too big and not too small, because I'll need that to make some marks. One of the things about the Lemoyne Star block is that up until now, I'd say the majority of the time, I was asking you to cut your pieces larger than you need them. Then we would make the unit and trim them down so that we could get the most perfect blocks. With the Lemoyne Star, you can't do that. You have to cut everything. This needs to be the block that you do your most precise cutting. Okay? So for an 8-inch finished block, these are the sizes we need. We need 2 strips that'll make the star, so I'll have a black and a green that are cut 2 1/8 inches wide, and then a 15-inch strip. Then we're going to need a square that is cut 4 7/8 inches, and that square we're going to cut on the diagonal twice to yield 4 triangles. So first, it's kind of like doing setting triangles that I'll show you a little bit later when we set the quilt on point. So one diagonal, then leave the square in place. Just move your ruler so that you can do the diagonal in the other direction. So then you have 4 triangles. Then you also need 4 squares that are cut 2 7/8 inches. No cutting them the 3 inches like we've done in so many of the other techniques in this block. Now on the squares and the triangles, we need to mark a turning point. With a method of turning point will make more sense once we start, but the idea is we need a dot that is a 1/4 of an inch in on the block. So I like to line it up so that it's on the 1/4 of an inch, and then I use the micron pen to go a 1/4 of an inch up, and that's where I make my dot. Now this is a permanent marking pen, but I'm not worried about it. I'm going to be spinning right there. You won't be able to see it. And I don't know if you can see that dot. He's so small. Then you want to also do that on the inside of the triangle blocks. So each one gets a 1/4 inch dot, or a dot at the 1/4 of an inch from each side. There. Now the first step to the sewing process is to sew your strips together. So I took those 2 1 1/8 inch strips and I sewed them together. I'm not going to press them yet. I'm going to cut my diamonds. Oh, I like to have them here so the seam is toward me and it opens up to that side. I don't know why. It just feels more comfortable to me. Then taking my ruler, I'm going to place the 45-degree angle of the ruler on the cut edge, which is down here by the seam. And I'm going to cut. Then I take the fabric and turn it around. Now I am going to cut the diamonds the 2 1/8 inch. So the same width as a strip is the size that you cut your diamonds. So when I'm doing that, I'll make sure you can see this. I'm going to line up the 45-degree angle here on the fold, on the cut edge, and then 2 1/8 inches here. So from this edge in is 1, 2 1/8 inches. So always kind of looking at the 45 and the measurement and make the cut. For each Lemoyne Star block, you will need 4 of these blocks, or 4 of these diamond segments. There, now I have 4 done. Now I need to take the time to press these open. Now back when I used to make Lemoyne Stars, I used to take the diamond segments and cut them first, then sew them first, and then press them open. And I just found that it made a lot more sense for me to sew the seam while it was a strip and then cut them and press them open. So we're going to press our seams open, which up to now we've not done that. We've pressed all of our seams in one direction, trying the best to do our seam separating and our flipping techniques to get the flattest blocks possible. With the Lemoyne Star or any block that you're going to set the seam in, I find that I like it best when I open that seam. The other thing with these blocks, getting my fingernail in there there it is that all these fabrics, I did the spray sizing in the very, very first episode. For a Lemoyne Star, that makes the construction of this block so much easier. So if you had not done that to all your fabrics before, I highly recommend that you do it to these pieces before you cut them down. So all the background and the diamonds, be sure that you've spray sized the fabrics and then cut them down. So now let's get our pieces over here and you will be able to start to see the block come together. So we've got our diamonds. We have our setting triangles that go on the top and bottom and sides. And then we have our setting squares. Now with the setting squares, the idea is that dot that you make is on the inside. So there's the dot. That's what our Lemoyne Star is going to look like. So for me, I like to piece the setting triangles first, these units. So I'm going to take them all and just stack them one on top of another. And my triangles. And this is the first unit that I'm going to piece. Now, when I'm piecing these, you can see how it's called a Y seam, a set-in seam or a Y seam. This creates the Y right there. I like to take the right-hand side diamond and fold it down. As I am folding that down, a few of those seams are going to come loose, or a few of the stitches rather, are going to come loose. You want it to come loose about 1/4 of an inch. So if I place my ruler here, from the edge of the diamond here down, that's opened up 1/4 of an inch. So then you can take, and after I've done that, I flip it back, and now I'm going to take the black diamond and I'm going to flip it right sides onto the triangle, and I'm going to make that line up right on top of another. You might want to put a little pin in there as you take it to the sewing machine. Now I'm going to get all 4 of these ready to go. So I have them all pinned and lined up and ready to go to my sewing machine. Now I'm hoping at my sewing machine that I can find a really good close-up here to show you how I sew these. So I'm going to take the right hand diamond, that is the green one now, and fold it back. When I fold that back, I should be able to see that mark that I made right there. So I'm going to start at the beginning of the diamond. When my needle gets to that dot, I stop with the needle in the down position. So let's see how we can see. Now I'm using my guidelines for quilting to create my scant 1/4 inch seam. And I'm sewing until my needle goes to the dot. So there. Now the needle is in the red fabric and it is not in the black fabric any longer. So now I can take and spin this around. Take that pin out of there. And hold down the red fabric. So the red fabric you can see is lining up now with the guidelines for quilting guide. Hold that down as you spin the other diamonds around. So by spinning this around, spinning it until the green diamond lines up right on top of the red diamond. And then you're ready to sew. So there should be no gap of stitches. So let's do that again. So starting with the black diamond on top, folding down the green diamond, or the right hand diamond in this case. Keeping it lined up. I'm going to sew until my needle goes off the black fabric and only one more stitch, only into the red fabric. Lift your presser foot, spin that around so now the bottom fabric, my red fabric, is running straight toward me. Hold on to that with your right hand as you spin the diamond around until that top diamond, the green one, lands right on top of the red. And I've got 4 of these to make. You will have to edit this one out because my seam flipped over. All 4 done. Now we go to our ironing board. So at the ironing board, when you've cut these apart, these will make the first parts of our Lemoyne Star, the first Y seams. So I like to press these so that the background fabric, which in the case of this block would be considered the red fabric, I like to press them so that it goes over the diamonds, and I like to do that from the front. So from the front, I can see the seams are flipped toward the diamonds and set it flat. Then I take the next one and I set it right there, the diamond right on top, offsetting from the seams. Lay that down, and the next one. So you've got 4 of these segments. Oops. There. So now I've got my first segments done. These are the Y seams with the triangles, the setting triangles. So let's put our star back into place. All those are done, and then these are the squares that will go here. So the next step is to piece in, let's do these ones, these squares into these units. So let's move these out of the way and let's look at this. So with this one, you need to first sew that seam together. So I'm going to flip that over, and I like to open it up so that I can see the two colors and then roll the seam down so that they're one on top of another and put a pin in there. Then the same thing here. This flips up on top. Open it up, and then you can roll the seam, just kind of rolls, keeping it lined up one on top of another. Now most of the time we're able to, butt the seam one way or to the other. You can't do that with this. So let's take that there, and so it's just a matter of rolling it. So back at our sewing machine, I'm going to sew the scant 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Right there. Line these edges up so that you've got a straight seam. And the second half. Whoops. There we go. They should both look exactly the same, so keep that in mind. How I've got the green and the black. On this back one, it was the green and the black. So be sure that they're both exactly the same. Now back at our table, we want to press these seams open just like we did with the diamond segments. So take your time to open that up. Usually like to do it, finger press it first, then bring in my iron so I can give it a steam burst. So there's one half, and then the second. Take your time. Don't let those seams beat you. Make them lay the way you want them to lay. So take your time. So those two will go together. So now it's time to put in the first two setting squares. So just like when we did the first two diamonds going together, I like to stack my two halves up. This side will go first. So if I take this and flip it over on top of that square, lining up the top edge and the side on the diamond, put a pin in there. Then you want to fold this back. Let's get that out of the way. Fold this back until that seam opens. So sometimes you might want to take your seam ripper, pluck a couple of those stitches. I don't cut the stitches, just pluck them out. Sometimes it folds and opens, sometimes it doesn't. Just got to do what you got to do. Folding that back, I should be able to see the dot. There is the dot right there. Now you'll see that I've got this green fabric, looks a little bit big. That's okay. I'm going to let that green fabric actually bubble up there if that's what it takes to see my dot. Trust me, this will all work out. And put a pin there. Then I'll come to the second one. There's my dot. Yep, and then this time it opened up really nicely. I never know what's going to make it open up and what's not. There. So flipping the green over on top, so the right hand diamond over on top, line up that straight edge and the edge on the diamond, put a pin in there, then fold this back until you can see that point. There it is. This time I don't have a bubble with the green, and it all comes down to the precision of your cutting. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to show you how to make that work. So now going to the sewing machine, I'm going to first start with this one that doesn't have a bubble, then we'll go to the one that has the bubble. All right, so starting here at my sewing machine, I'm going to sew the seam that I have pinned first, and this one didn't have a bubble, so I'm just going to fold back the black diamond and sew until the needle gets off the green fabric. 2 more stitches right there. So now it is just in the red fabric. Lift my presser foot, spin it around so the red square, let me get that out of the way. You can see the red square underneath is running straight toward me. My right hand is going to hold that square in place as my left hand spins the rest of the unit around until the edge of the next diamond is lined up with the red. Now I want to be sure that these match together, so I'm going to put a pin in here. And then I'm just going to kind of take from the back here, my hand is back here, kind of pull it back so that as I start, it'll catch the black fabric right away. Okay. So now this is the one, remember, that has the green fabric, got a little bit big. Watch what we do with this. It'll ease in. It won't be an issue. All right. So as it gets here, I want to fold this down so I know where I'm shooting for. And use your seam ripper or your awl to help kind of feed that green in. It'll ease right in there. It's a bias edge, so it's not a problem. So till you are just on the red fabric, lift your presser foot, spin it around. Oh, you got to take your pins out. Spin it around so now the red square underneath is lining up straight. Hold on to that with your right hand as your left hand spins the diamond unit around until it lines up. So this time it lines up quite nicely there. I'm going to grab it from the back, give it a little tug to make sure that the first stitch is right on the black diamond. And sew off onto my leader. Now when I'm sewing these, I'm usually doing more than just one at a time. I'll get a whole section of them done, and they're really quite comfortable. I enjoy it. I like things that require a little bit of extra effort. So now it's time to press these. These ones I like to press toward the red square. If I'm pressing it toward the diamond, I'm going to end up with a really bulky seam there, and I don't really want that. So I can press this one toward the diamond, and you see this that little corner? He's going to end up making a little teeny triangle right there. Give him a little steam. He looks really good. Now what I mean by that is that my points look good. I'll show you what I mean after I get this guy pressed. So toward the square, I'm going to repress that center. It's not staying down. And then this one. Now I know that everything is going at least slightly according to plan when my points are 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm going, all right, so far, so good. Now it's time to put the two halves together. When you're putting those two halves together, the trick is to get that point where these all intersect and this point where they all intersect to line up on top of another. So if you will take them and put them right sides together, using one pin, poke right down into that intersection of the green and the black, then flip it up, and now I can poke this right down into the intersection on the bottom piece. Pick them up and keep that pin straight up and down. So that's holding those together. Now take another pin, going under the seam, secure it. So now I can take that pin out and I have this one securing. Now I'm going to sew my seam from here to here, and we'll be back to put in our last two setting squares. I have the two halves together, and I'm very happy to show off my center. That's probably the best center I've ever made. Trust me, they don't always turn out that nice, and I'm okay with that. This time, just a little pat on my back, it really worked out great. Under pressure, that's what it is. All right, so I've got two last squares to do. This square and this square, and you'll do them obviously one at a time. Just like before, you're going to open up the top of that opening about 1/4 of an inch. So I have done that on both sides. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to flip the green over onto the red, line up the square at the top and down on this side and put a pin in. Then when you open that, you should be able to see the dot. Make sure you can see the dot. You can shift that up. I have to shift it up again. Green is a little bit big again. Not a problem. Pin that in place. Now here I'm going to sew with that same scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew until, just like with all the set-in seams, until this is just on the red fabric. Lift my presser foot and take out my pins. Spin this around. Let's get that pin out of there. And then the red fabric, my setting square, can you see him? He's lined up with the seam guide straight, going straight. Spin this around, all the way around. He's gotten a little bit bigger this time until the edge is lined up, matching up the square edge and giving a little bit of a pull back here to get them all lined up. So that's the first one, and the second one is going to be just like that. My Lemoyne Star block is done, and I'm very proud of it. I want to warn you again, I'm not trying to tell you it's the easiest block out there. I'm telling you it is the most difficult block in this quilt, but I think you need to try it. You'll never know if you don't try it. Keep in mind those set-in seams, that's the same way that you might make a Lemoyne Star. I'm sorry, a Lone Star. Same idea, the pieces are just bigger, but it's a really cool technique, and I think if you're going to be a well-rounded quilter, you need to be able to do a set-in seam. So this block did turn out just a smidge bigger, maybe about 1/8 of an inch bigger. That's all right. When it comes time that I'm piecing all of these blocks together, so these are all the ones that I've made since we started this series, half square triangles, some square and a square, here's more half square triangles. We did a lot of fun pinwheels. I love my pinwheels. I've got a few more to make, and then I'll be ready to start putting this into the setting. The setting we're going to choose is going to be very similar to what we have here, where it will be on point and with sashings. So next time we'll work with sashings, the proper way to cut sashings. And you might be thinking, what do you mean proper way to cut sashings? They're strips. Nope, there is a right way and a wrong way. So I hope you will be with us next time as I show you the right way to cut sashings. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead, click that button, hit the notifications bell so that you'll get a notification when our next videos come out. We do have a membership available now with the Quilting with Nancy. So on the front page of our YouTube channel, you'll see a join button. If you'll click on that join button, you'll find out what it's all about. It's just kind of a way to get a little bit more information about quilting and a way to help me out so that I can keep doing this and giving you free videos. I'm really glad that you stuck with this so long, and I hope you'll be ready to put your quilt together with the settings next time. Have a great day.